Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Sunday at a special time, noon Pacific, because Shevuos is beginning tonight. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Joe in the Inland Empire, Guy in Ohio, Hood in South Carolina, Tom in PA, Bell in Texas. Tom is having coffee. Yehud in South Carolina. Wish everyone hugs some Maya Capiz in the Philippines. Eve in Florida. Alan in New York City. Welcome, everybody. First of all, I apologize. I had a false start. We got started on YouTube, but not on Facebook, so I started over. That's what was going there. And I apologize. I taught something wrong a few days ago, and I want to make a quick correction. And it's a translation of this phrase, Shavua Bitui. Oath on an utterance, right? So I said an oath on an utterance is an oath that does not take effect because it's an oath, let's say, that a person says on his oath, he swears he will not eat nevela, right? So that would be a kosher animal, not slaughtered in a kosher animal, which is prohibited for a Jew to eat since he's already under an oath not to eat it. From the oath that we all swore at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, the new oath does not take effect. As we saw, there's an exception if the new oath includes other matters that would have been permitted to him, but for the oath, then the oath does take hold, and when he then eats something that is prohibited anyway, he would be liable for eating the prohibited food and for violating the oath. That's the general principle. That is correct. But the phrase oath on an utterance, our English translation, that doesn't refer to that specific situation of taking an oath not to eat something that's already prohibited by the Torah and the oath that we swore at Mount Sinai. No, oath on an utterance is the kinds of oaths that we've been talking about, where you create an oath through your speech, either because a person says he swears to God that he will or won't do, has or hasn't done, he swears an oath, whatever the particular formula is that he uses to create and establish that oath, that process, right, creating an oath in that way, that's what we mean by the phrase an oath on an utterance, and that is to distinguish from an oath of testimony, right, in the situation of a Bailey who's going to swear, or somebody who's just brought into court to swear. An oath on testimony is what's distinct from an oath on an utterance. But an oath on an utterance is basically all the different kinds of oaths that we've been talking about. They don't take effect in that situation where you're already prohibited by the Torah and you're simply being redundant and swearing again that you won't do something that's already prohibited to you by the Torah. But I misspoke and said that situation is what we mean when we say an oath on an utterance, and I'm sorry about that. And that'll become clearer in today's daf. This is another one of those situations where the sages jump into more complex situations before they explain the simpler rules. We would normally start with the basics and then work our way up to more complex situations, but the Talmud is almost never organized in that way. And I'm sorry that, I was not advanced enough a teacher to get that right from the get-go, but I just wanted to clarify that as soon as I understood the mistake that I had made. Okay, we are picking it up today with Mishna number 3 here in chapter 3 of Tractate Shevuos, the 26th volume of the Talmud. We are near the top of page 25a. We're doing a single daf today, page 25. We'll get a little bit into 26 to set ourselves up for a double when we return from the holiday of Shevuos, right? Shevuos, oaths, Shavuos, weeks. That holiday begins tonight. We won't have class not tomorrow, not Tuesday, but God willing, we'll resume on Wednesday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, with a double daf then. Okay, Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 3. If one unwittingly takes a false oath about the past or breaks an oath he made about the future, both if it is an oath that addresses matters that concern oneself and if it is an oath that addresses matters that concern others, he is liable to bring a sliding scale offering for an oath on an utterance. And likewise, an oath on an utterance may address both tangible matters and intangible matters. We'll clarify this more as we go on. How so? Examples of oaths about future actions that concern others are if one said, on my oath, I will give so-and-so a particular item, or on my oath, I will not give it to him. And examples of such oaths about the past are if one said, on my oath, I gave another a particular item, or on my oath, I did not give it to him. Why is this even worth mentioning? If it involves only yourself, right, then it's all completely in your power. Whether a person says, on my oath, I drank such and such yesterday, or on my oath, I will drink such and such tomorrow. It's in your power with respect to the past to know what you did or didn't do. Perhaps you forgot, but it was only under your control, especially about what you'll do tomorrow. If you're swearing an oath today that tomorrow you'll drink such and such, it's in your power to make that oath come true and be realized, or turn it into a false oath when you don't drink that item. But when another person is involved and he says on his oath he swears to give such and such to a person tomorrow, well, what if that person leaves the country tonight? It's not in his control, and that raises certain problems, as we shall see. Examples of oaths about the future that address intangible matters are where one said, on my oath I will sleep, or on my oath I will not sleep. Examples of such oaths about the past are where one said, on my oath I slept, or on my oath I did not sleep. And other examples of oaths about intangible matters are when one takes an oath saying, I will throw a stone into the sea, or I will not throw it, or I threw it, or I did not throw it. Right? So in all these situations, an oath of utterance can take effect. And as we're going to see, this is going to make an important distinction on oaths versus vows. Right? And remember that general principle is not only do they have different language, but sort of philosophically they're a little bit different too. The vow is I declare or I promise. Mostly I declare. That creates the language of a vow. And an oath is more this I swear or swear before God, or I make an oath, I swear an oath on my oath, etc. But that's the language. Philosophically, a vow, a neder, is generally used to say that a particular object is prohibited to me. I can no longer touch that object, use that object, make use of that object, etc. Whereas an oath is more about my own behavior. Right? That I will not take up that object, not because the object is prohibited to me, but because I've sworn an oath not to have connection or contact or lifting, whatever, that object. The oath is more on my behavior than on the object itself. And it could also be positive. I swear that I will do such and such, or I swear that I have done such and such. Right? Now, this distinction between oaths and vows is going to be very much part of this discussion. Rabbi Yishmael says, one is liable only for an oath on an utterance taken about the future. Right? That's because the Torah talks about oaths only in the future. I will or I won't do such and such. But remember that the whole subject of this tractate opened with two that are for, right? Two oaths that are stated in the Torah, I will do such and such, or I won't do such and such. And the sages extended that to cover past behavior as well. One can swear an oath that he has done such and such, or he has not done such and such. And when it's with respect to the past, then it's immediately a true oath or a false oath because the behavior already happened. Whereas when he swears that he will do such and such, that won't become a true or false oath until the time passes in which he would have done the behavior that he promised to do or not do. Right, so Rabbi Yishmael says, one is liable only for an oath on an utterance taken about the future, as it is stated in the Torah, Leviticus 5:4, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatsoever it be that a man shall utter clearly with an oath. So the Torah refers explicitly only to oaths about what one will do in the future. So Rabbi Yishmael is being a literalist about that, but Rabbi Akiva said to him, if so, and one is liable only for oaths explicitly mentioned in the verse, then I have derived only that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters to which doing evil or doing good apply. Right? The Torah in its language says, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good. Right? Well, what if he just simply says, I'm going to pick up a rock tomorrow, and he swears that he will do that? That's neither evil nor good. It's just a fact, right? In a certain context, it may be a good thing or a bad thing, but generally speaking, picking up a rock is neither evil nor good. So if you're going to be so literal, Rabbi Yishmael, says Rabbi Akiva, then oaths about the future should only cover matters where evil or good apply. So ask Rabbi Akiva, from where do I derive that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters which doing evil and doing good do not apply? And in fact, that's the law. We don't have to have evil or good applying for an oath to actually take hold. So Rabbi Yishmael said to him, the law in these cases is derived by amplification of the meaning of the verse. And Rabbi Akiva said to him, well, if the verse is amplified for this, to extend the law of an oath on an utterance to matters that do not involve doing evil or good, then the verse is also amplified for that, i.e., oaths relating to behavior that's happened in the past. That's Mishnah number 3. Now the Gemara. With regard to oaths about intangible matters, right? Not a tangible thing, but something intangible, like whether I will sleep or not. The sages taught there is a stringency that applies to vows, right? So vows, I declare that something is prohibited to me. There's a stringency that applies to vows and not to oaths. And there is a stringency that applies to oaths and not to vows. The stringency that applies to vows is that vows take effect with regard to a matter involving a mitzvah, like they take effect with regard to an optional matter, which is not the case with regard to oaths. And this is based on that philosophical difference, that vows pertain to objects and oaths pertain to the human behavior. So a person cannot take an oath to say, he will not eat matzah on the first night of Passover, right? Because he's commanded to eat matzah on the first night of Passover. So if he swears an oath to violate a mitzvah, the oath is meaningless. On the other hand, a person can swear a vow and say he declares that matzah is prohibited to him, right? So he can still fulfill his obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Passover with other matzah, but that matzah is prohibited to him. And that's why this vow can take effect even in the context of a mitzvah. That's a stringency that pertains to vows that doesn't pertain to oaths. Now, the stringency that applies to oaths as opposed to vows is that oaths take effect with regard to an intangible matter like they do with a tangible matter, which is not the case with vows. Vows pertain to objects that become prohibited. Oaths can be taken about actions that don't involve objects like sleep. The Mishnah teaches how so. Examples are if one said, on my oath I will give so-and-so some item, or on my oath I will not give it to him. So what is the case of an oath in which he says, I will give? If we say that he takes an oath that he will give charity to a poor person, what's the problem there? All Jews are obligated to give charity to the poor, right? It's part of our commandments that we give charity. So whether you take an oath that you won't give charity, which violates the commandment and definitely no good, or you take an oath to give charity, Again, no good because you're already obligated by your oath at Mount Sinai. Right? So if we say he takes an oath that he will give charity to a poor person, that is not an oath that takes effect since he is under oath from Mount Sinai to give charity. As it is stated with regard to a poor person, Deuteronomy 15:10, you shall give to him, right? You shall give him. So rather, the case is where he said he would give a gift to a rich person. That's not charity. The oath takes effect because there's no commandment that covers that situation. So if he takes an oath to give charity to a particular rich person or to some rich person, that oath takes effect. Now the Mishnah teaches that if one takes an oath saying, I will sleep or I will not sleep, the oath takes effect and he is liable to bring an offering if he fails to fulfill the terms of his oath. And the Gemara asks, is that so? But doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say that in the case of one who says, on my oath, I will not sleep for 3 days, can a person not sleep for 3 days? There might be some superhuman that could, make a plan like that and fulfill it, but it's generally understood that no human can make a plan to not sleep for 3 days and fulfill it, right? So that's not possible. So then what happened here? If it's absolutely impossible, would we say this is a vain oath, and then he is liable for having violated the prohibition on uttering an oath in vain? Or do we say that his oath takes hold, but since it's impossible to fulfill it, then he's going to have to bring the offering for failing to perform his oath? Let's see what the Gemara says. But doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say that in the case of one who says, on my oath, I will not sleep for 3 days, what do? The court flogs him immediately, right? Because he took an oath that cannot be fulfilled, and the oath doesn't take hold, he may go to sleep immediately. He doesn't have to try to not sleep for as long as possible, but he is flogged for taking an oath in vain. Since it is impossible for one not to sleep for 3 days, his oath is regarded as an oath taken in vain from the outset. How could someone who took an oath never to sleep be liable to bring an offering for an oath on an utterance if he slept unwittingly? Right? We say you can't take an oath, that an oath to say not to, if someone takes an oath not to sleep for 3 days, that's considered an oath in vain immediately. He's flogged for that transgression, but he doesn't have to try to not sleep. He can sleep immediately. So what if he takes not an oath not to sleep for 3 days, but he takes an oath not to sleep, period? Like he's never going to sleep again. That has to be an oath in vain. How can you say that would take effect as an oath? So the Gemara answers there, Rabbi Yochanan is referring to a case where he said explicitly that he will not sleep for 3 days. Here the Mishna is referring to a case where he did not say 3 days, and his oath extends only for the amount of time that it is possible not to sleep. Right? So we're reading in words that he didn't speak, but where he said he takes an oath not to sleep, we hear that as he takes an oath not to sleep for the amount of time that it's possible not to sleep. Maybe he's going to go 24 hours without sleeping. It's possible to do that, and that's what he's vowing to do. And then if he goes to sleep at his normal bedtime, he violated his oath, which did take hold, and that's why he becomes liable to bring the sliding scale offering if he did this unwittingly. Now, the Mishnah teaches that an example of an oath on an utterance is where one took an oath, I will throw a stone into the sea, or I will not throw it. Right? This doesn't have this aspect of a good or evil action, but it is something that is dependent on his own action. It's dependent on an action. It is tangible. Okay, so this is an oath that takes hold, and now he's obligated himself according to his oath. It was stated with regard to one who says, my oath, so-and-so threw a stone into the sea, or on my oath, he did not throw it. Okay, now he's talking about past events, right? So this happened, right? He's swearing an oath that someone else either threw a stone into the sea or didn't throw a stone into the sea. There's no dependency because it already happened. Either that stone was thrown or it wasn't thrown. Right? Sounds like he's talking about something in terms of being a witness to it, but not necessarily. This is not an oath of testimony in court. He's just making the statement that on his oath, someone threw a stone or did not throw a stone. It already happened in the past. About this, Rav says, if it was later discovered that what he said was false, he is liable to bring an offering for his oath, which means that the oath took hold. And Shmuel says he is exempt, right? So the guy swears on an oath that someone else threw a stone into the sea, and then it turns out that someone else didn't throw a stone into the sea. Why would Shmuel say he's exempt? It must be that the oath never took hold. Why did the oath never take hold? It already happened or it didn't happen. But because it's talking about someone else's action, not the actions of the speaker, and since oaths of the past are connected to, sort of philosophically speaking, and the two that become four, oaths about the future, right? Since you can't take an oath into the future that concerns somebody else's behavior, according to Shmuel, it seems, you also can't take oaths having to do with the past that are based on someone else's behavior. The Gemara explains the opinions. Rav says that he is liable, as the oath can be positive or negative. The sages derive from the verse, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good, in Leviticus 5:4. And the sages derive from that one is liable to bring an offering for an oath on an utterance only when the oath is such that it could be inverted from the positive to the negative and vice versa. Since he can take an oath either that he threw the stone or that he did not, he is liable. And Shmuel says he is exempt because the oath cannot be stated with regard to the future. He cannot control what so-and-so will do in the future. Consequently, it is an oath taken in vain rather than an oath on an utterance, even though it was stated about the past, but Shmuel connects oaths in the past to oaths about the future and disqualifies all of them if they're based on somebody else's behavior. The Gemara asks, shall we say that they disagree with regard to the issue that is the subject of the dispute between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva? As we learned in the Mishna, Rabbi Yishmael says one is liable for an oath on an utterance taken about the future, as it is stated, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatsoever it be, that man shall utter clearly with an oath. So Rabbi Akiva said to him, Rabbi Yishmael says only oaths in the future count, because that's what the Torah says. Rabbi Akiva says, no, from the language in the Torah about oaths in the future, we also learned that oaths about the past can take hold. Rabbi Akiva said to him, if so, one is liable only for oaths explicitly mentioned in the verse, then I have derived only that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters to which doing evil and good apply. From where do I derive that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters to which doing evil and good do not apply? And Rabbi Yishmael said to him, this is derived by amplification of the verse. And Rabbi Akiva said to him, well, if the verse is amplified for this, that we can do action, that we can establish an oath not only on actions that are involved doing evil or good, but just actions that don't involve evil and good, then we can also amplify the verse to include not only oaths about the future, but also about the past. Say that Rav, who ruled that one who took an oath that so-and-so threw a stone into the sea in the past is liable. So Rav is stating his opinion in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that one can be liable for oaths about the past. And so therefore you should say that Shmuel, who says that this oath about somebody else throwing a stone in the past or not won't take hold, and therefore the person is exempt if it turns out to be false, it must be that Shmuel states his opinion in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, that one is exempt from liability with regard to taking an oath about the past. That analysis sounds very good, very clean. But the Gemara rejects this suggestion and suggests different. Everyone agrees that according to the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, one is exempt from liability for taking an oath that so-and-so threw an item, because according to Rabbi Yishmael, there's no such thing as an oath about events that happened in the past. Now, with regard to a statement, i.e. an oath, that could be a valid oath referring to the future, for example, I will throw an item, Rabbi Yishmael does not deem one liable for it when it refers to the past. Is it necessary to say that one is not liable for a statement, meaning an oath, that so-and-so threw a particular item that cannot be a valid oath when adjusted to be referring to someone else's actions in the future, since it is not under the oath taker's control? So when they disagree, it is with regard to how to understand the law regarding the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The opinion of Rav is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva without any qualification of it. And Shmuel says Rabbi Akiva deems one liable only there in the case of an oath that refers to the past, when it is a statement, i.e. an oath, that could be a valid oath referring to the future. In such a case, Rabbi Akiva deems one liable also if the oath was taken with referring to the past. In other words, is it about my own actions in the future? Valid oath. If it's not about my own actions in the future, not a valid oath. Therefore, if I now amplify the verse to include statements regarding events that have happened in the past, since it's done by amplification of the verses in the Torah that only refer to future events, since I can't make an oath on something that involves somebody else's actions with regard to the future, an oath about somebody else's actions in the past won't take hold either. Right? In such a case, Rabbi Akiva deems one liable also if the oath was taken with referring to the past, like an oath where one says, I threw a stone. But with regard to statements that cannot be valid oaths if adjusted to the future, like an oath on another person's action, he does not deem one liable when they are made about the past. Again, because liability for oaths about past events is derived by amplification from the law of oaths about future events. The Gemara suggests, shall we say that the dispute between these Amoraim, sages of the Gemara, parallels the disagreement between Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera and the rabbis. Now we're on page 25b. As we learned in a Mishna on page 27a, which we will learn in a few days, if one took an oath to refrain from performing a mitzvah. Okay, can you take an oath to refrain from performing a mitzvah? You're commanded to perform mitzvahs. Can you take an oath that you won't perform a mitzvah? Generally speaking, no. If the only part of that, if the only words in your oath are, that he swears he will not perform such and such mitzvah, which the Torah commands him to do, that oath should not take hold. Right? So if one took an oath to refrain from performing a mitzvah and he did not refrain, he is exempt from bringing an offering on an oath of utterance. Well, okay. Right, so he is exempt because the oath did not take hold. Right, so he said he won't do a mitzvah, then he does the mitzvah, he's exempt. Why is he exempt? Because the oath never took hold. Why did it never take hold? Because you can't take an oath to say that you will refrain from performing a mitzvah. If one took an oath to perform a mitzvah and he did not perform it, he is also exempt, because you already have an oath to perform those mitzvahs from Mount Sinai. Though it would have been fitting to argue that he is liable to bring the offering in accordance with with the statement of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. As Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera said, what? If with regard to an oath concerning an optional matter for which one is not under oath from Mount Sinai, he is liable for breaking it. Then, with regard to an oath about a commandment for which he is under oath from Mount Sinai, is it not logical that he would be liable for it? Right? Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is offering us a kal v'chomer. Right? He's saying, well, you can take an oath to say that you will eat eggs tomorrow, and then if you don't eat eggs, then you're liable to bring an offering for violating your oath, right? If you do this unwittingly. So therefore, if on an optional matter you can take an oath and become liable when you don't fulfill it, how much more so when you take an oath that you will fulfill something you're commanded to do and then you don't fulfill it, you should have to bring the offering. That's the logic. Sounds good, but we don't hold that way because an oath doesn't take effect on an oath that's already been in place. The rabbis said to him, right, this is how they overrule him and make his opinion a minority opinion. The rabbis said to him, no. If you said that one is liable for breaking an oath concerning an optional action where the Torah rendered one liable for a negative oath not to perform it, like for a positive oath to perform it, right? You could say, the person could say he swears an oath to eat eggs the following day, or he could swear an oath to not eat eggs the following day. Both, are within the world of what's permitted, right? He can swear to eat eggs or not eat eggs, and he will not have violated Torah law, but he will have obligated himself in one direction or the other, and then he has to fulfill it or be liable to bring the offering. But shall you also say that one is liable for breaking an oath concerning a commandment, where the Torah did not render one liable for a negative oath like a positive one? If one takes an oath to refrain from performing a mitzvah, and he did not refrain, he is exempt. And the Gemara asks, well, shall we say that Rav states his opinion in accordance with that of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, who holds that one can be liable for an oath that cannot be inverted? And Shmuel states his opinion in accordance with the rabbis, who hold that one can be liable only if the oath has the possibility of being inverted? Since you can't invert an oath relating to the mitzvah because you're commanded in that, right? You can't swear that you will the same way that you could swear that you won't, because you certainly can't swear that you won't perform something you're commanded to do. For that reason, we say you also can't say that you swear that you will perform something that you are commanded to perform. Now the Gemara so the Gemara rejects this. Everyone, i.e., both Rav rejects the analysis. The Gemara rejects this. Everyone, i.e., both Rav and Shmuel agree with regard to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera and his proposed Kal V'chomer that one is liable if he took an oath that so-and-so performed an action that he did not, in fact, perform. Now we're talking about something different, right? If you're saying that you swear an oath, right, now you're talking about statements, right, not actions. You're swearing that somebody else did or didn't do something, including whether that other person fulfilled or didn't fulfill a commandment, right? You're not swearing that you will or won't perform a commandment. You're just swearing that someone else did or didn't perform a commandment. Did that factually happen in the world or not, right? You're swearing an oath. So about your statement about whether it happened or not, what you're swearing to is the veracity of what you are stating that someone else did or didn't do, right? Everyone, Rav and Shmuel, agree with regard to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera that one is liable if he took an oath that so-and-so, someone else, performed an action that he did not in fact perform. So the Gemara explains, now, given that Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera does not require that it be possible to invert a negative oath to a positive oath, does he require that it be possible for an oath to refer to the future as well as the past? Shmuel explained that the reason one is not liable for an oath that so-and-so threw a stone into the sea is that it cannot be inverted to address the future. In other words, so-and-so will throw a stone into the sea. That is not an oath under the oath taker's control. Since he can't control that with respect to future events, it also doesn't take effect with respect to past events. When they disagree, it is with regard to the opinion of the rabbis. Shmuel holds, like the rabbis, that one is exempt in the case of an oath that cannot be inverted. Accordingly, Shmuel ruled that one who takes an oath that so-and-so threw an item is exempt from bringing an offering if it is found that the statement was false. And Rav holds that the rabbis do not deem one liable in the case of an oath that cannot be inverted from negative to positive or vice versa. Why? Because it is written explicitly, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good. But with regard to the requirement that it be possible to invert an oath referring to the future to refer to the past or vice versa, which is derived from an amplification of the meaning of the verses, the rabbis deem one liable as they do not accept this derivation. Rav Hamnuna raises an objection to Shmuel's opinion from a Mishna on page 29b. If one said, I did not eat today, or I did not don tefillin today, and another said to him, I administer an oath to you that your statement is true, and the original speaker said, Amen, he is liable for breaking an oath on an utterance if his statement was false, as responding Amen to an oath administered to oneself is equivalent to stating the oath explicitly, right? So whether he says, I swear that I wrapped tefillin today, or he says, I wrapped tefillin today, and someone else says, swear that you wrapped tefillin today, and he says, amen. So now it's as if he said he swears that he wrapped tefillin today. It's about the past. Either he did or he didn't. And so if it's false, he becomes liable to bring the offering. Now, granted, how is this relevant to what we've been talking about? Granted, he is liable in the case where he said, I did not eat or I did not wrap, since it also would have been possible for him to take an oath saying, I will not eat. But in the case where he said, I did not wrap tefillin, would it have been possible for him to take an oath saying, I will not wrap tefillin? If he's a Jewish male and it's not a holiday or Shabbos, he's obligated to wrap tefillin. He can't take an oath that he won't wrap tefillin on a given day. That oath will not take effect. And since we're extending the meaning of oaths to include the past from the explicit language in the Torah about the future, if he can't take an oath with respect to an action that's commanded for him, maybe we're going to say that he can't even take an oath about the truth or the veracity of the statement that he already did or didn't wrap tefillin in the past, if it's a matter that concerns a mitzvah, a commandment. Rav Hamnuna, raised the objection and he resolves it. The Tana, right, the rabbi of the Mishnaic period, teaches the Mishnah disjunctively, referring to two different cases. When he teaches that one is liable for taking the oath, I did not eat, it refers to one's liability to bring an offering. When he teaches liability for the oath, I did not wrap tefillin, it refers to one's liability to receive lashes for taking a false oath, right? You can be subject to lashes on when you make an oath about past behavior because it's true or not true at the moment that you utter it. If it's false and you were warned not to take a false oath, then you do it anyway, then you could be subject to lashes. But about the future, that involves bringing an offering or not, but not lashes because of the problem of uncertain forewarning, as we discussed a few days ago. Rava also raises an objection to Shmuel's opinion from a Mishna on page 29. Which oath is an oath taken in vain? It is when one takes an oath to deny that which is known to people to be true. One who swears that the moon is made out of green cheese, everyone knows that it's not. When he uses the language of oaths about such a statement that everyone knows is false, we don't say it's a false oath, we say it's an oath in vain. And for example, if one says about a stone column that is in such and such a place that it is made of gold, everyone knows that column is made of stone. He says it's made of gold. We don't say he swore a false oath. We say he swore an oath in vain. And Ula says that the phrase known to people in the Mishnah is referring to when it is a fact that is known to 3 people. It doesn't have to be known to the whole world that column in such and such a place is made of stone. But if 3 people know that it's made of stone and he swears it's made of gold, that's enough to trigger liability for an oath in vain as opposed to a false oath. But interestingly, if it's a stone column, the fact that it's made of stone is only known to 2 people and he swears that it's made of gold and it's false, now it's a false oath, not an oath in vain. The Gemara now, how is that relevant? The Gemara explains the objection to Shmuel's opinion. The reason he is liable for taking an oath in vain is due to the fact that his oath is contradicted, that it is, let me say that again. The Gemara explains the objection to Shmuel's opinion. The reason he is liable for taking an oath in vain is due to the fact that his oath contradicted a fact known to 3 people. But if it is not known, he violates the prohibition of taking a false oath on an utterance. Given Shmuel's opinion, why should he be liable? Isn't it impossible to invert the oath to make it about the future, saying that the column will be of gold? He raises the objection, then he resolves it. When the fact is known to 3 people, the one who takes an oath denying it violates the prohibition of taking an oath in vain, right? Which is outside the realm of true or false oaths about future or past. Different kind of liability. If it is not known, then he violates the prohibition of taking a false oath, for which he receives lashes if he did so intentionally. Nevertheless, he is not liable to bring an offering for falsely taking an oath on an utterance, since this oath cannot be inverted to be about the future. New subject. Abaye said, and Rav, who holds one liable for an oath on an utterance, even if it cannot be inverted to refer to the future, concedes in a case where one says to another, on my oath, I know testimony that is relevant to you, and it is found afterward that he did not know testimony that was relevant to him. That in that case, he is exempt from bringing an offering for an oath on an utterance. And the reason is that it is not in the category of an oath that could be inverted to the negative oath of, I do not know testimony that is relevant to you, as that oath would not be an oath on an utterance, rather, it would be an oath of testimony. That's a separate category than these oaths about, I will or won't do something, I did or didn't do something. Those are oaths of utterances. But now when you're called to testify, right, before a Beis Din, before a rabbinic court, that's a different category of oaths. These are oaths of testimony, Shevuos ha'edus. The reason is that it is not in the category of an oath that could be inverted to the negative oath of I do not know testimony that is relevant to you, as that oath would be an oath of testimony rather than an oath on an utterance. The Torah states, Leviticus 5:1, and if anyone sin in that he hears the voice of adjuration, he being a witness, whether he has seen or known, if he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. You cannot decline to offer witness testimony when your witness testimony will affect the outcome of a trial, right? Of a court matter. You have to give the testimony. That's an oath of testimony. If you say you don't know or you weren't there, and then that's false, right? That's a different category. That's not oath on an utterance. That's oath of testimony. One is liable to bring an offering for an oath of testimony if he takes an oath falsely denying that he has knowledge of testimony in a monetary matter. And while it could trigger an offering, it's a different kind of offering than an offering for a false oath. False oath, as we've seen, sliding scale offering, depending on the finances of the person, a more or less expensive offering would be required when the temple is standing in Jerusalem. Oath of testimony, not sliding scale. But if he takes an oath saying, I knew testimony that is relevant to you, or I did not know testimony that is relevant to you, this law is subject to the dispute between Rav and Shmuel, right? I know or I don't know something that will, is relevant to your case. That's oath on testimony. What if he says, I did not know, or I did know in the past? Does that come into the category of oath of testimony, or does that come into the category of oath on an utterance? Let's see. It seems to be a dispute between Rav and Shmuel. Similarly, if he took an oath saying, I testified, or I did not testify, sounds like the category of testimony, oath of testimony, but he's talking about past events. Either it happened or it didn't. Either he came to court and he testified, or he didn't come to court and testify. That's a factual matter. I testified or I did not testify. Whether or not he's liable to bring an offering for an oath on an utterance depends on the dispute between Rav and Shmuel. In these cases, the oaths cannot be inverted from the past to the future and are also not oaths of testimony since they do not involve the refusal to testify, but merely the facts, did he or didn't he testify? The Gemara says, granted according to the opinion of Shmuel, who says that an oath about a matter that cannot be inverted to refer to the future is one for which one is not liable when it refers to the past. It is for that reason that the merciful one removed an oath of testimony, which cannot be inverted, from the category of an oath on an utterance and legislated it in a separate verse in the Torah, as we mentioned. But according to the opinion of Rav, what law did the merciful one remove it? For what halacha did the merciful one remove it from the category of an oath on an utterance and relate to it as a distinct category? Every oath of testimony is a case of an oath on an utterance, and there is no need to relate to it as a special case, according to Rav. And the sages said before, Abaye, an oath of testimony is singled out, according to Rav, in order to render one who takes it falsely liable to bring 2 sliding scale offerings for it, one for the false oath on an utterance and one for a false oath of testimony. Looks like I made a mistake before. That's also a sliding scale offering, but it's a separate offering. Abaye said to them, you cannot say that one who takes a false oath of testimony is liable to bring 2 offerings, as it is taught in a Baraisa with regard to the sliding scale offering that it is brought for both an oath of testimony and an oath on an utterance. The verse states, and it shall be, when he shall be guilty in one of these things, in Leviticus 5:5, by inference for one of the sins that render one liable to bring a sliding scale offering, you may deem him liable, but you may not deem him liable for 2. The Gemara asks, and if this is so, then according to Abaye's understanding of the opinion of Rav, for what law did the merciful one remove an oath of testimony from the category of an oath on an utterance and relate to it in a distinct category? And the Gemara answers, an oath of testimony is singled out as it is taught in a Baraisa. For every other one of the prohibitions for which one is liable to bring a sliding scale offering, it is stated in the verse, and it is hidden from him. We see that in Leviticus 5, verses 2 through 4. Right? In other words, it happened unwittingly. And here, with regard to the oath of testimony, the phrase, and it is hidden from him, is not stated. That's an important difference between oaths on an utterance and oaths of testimony. This serves to render one liable to bring an offering for taking a false oath of testimony intentionally, like one who is liable for doing so unwittingly. Right? If you violate the prohibition on swearing a false oath, if you do it unwittingly, you bring an offering. If you do it intentionally, you don't atone for that by bringing an offering. If you were warned and you did it anyway, you could be subject to lashes. Or if the lashes don't apply, nevertheless, bringing an offering will not be your path to atonement. But it sounds like since it was hidden from him is not stated with regard to an oath of testimony, then whether you falsely stated, I don't have testimony that relates to your case, and whether you did that intentionally or unintentionally, you will still be liable to bring an offering. The sages said to Abaye, say that the oath of testimony was singled out for a different reason. When he takes a false oath of testimony intentionally, he is liable to bring only 1 offering. But when he does so unwittingly, he is liable to bring 2. 1 for an oath of testimony and 1 for an utterance. Abaye said to them in response, is this not what they said in a Baraisa with regard to the verse about the sliding scale offering? When he shall be guilty in one of these things, Leviticus 5:5. So by inference, for one of the sins that render one liable to bring a sliding scale offering, you may deem him liable, but you may not deem him liable for 2. He unwittingly said, I don't have testimony that relates to your case. Turns out that he does. He did it unwittingly. So did he both speak falsely in an oath of testimony, and because he swore and it was false, make a false oath of utterance? And therefore, the one act of saying, I don't have information that relates to your case, triggers liability for 2 violated oaths, one an oath on testimony and one an oath on utterance? Or do we say, no, the language of the Torah is precise, and you can only be liable for 1 offering in that situation? We'll say it's on the oath of testimony, but he doesn't become liable to also bring an offering for violating a false oath. And since one does not bring an offering for an intentional false oath on an utterance, that would be lashes. If the verse is referring to a case where he intentionally took a false oath of testimony, how could there be a case where one is liable to bring 2 offerings such that this case needs to be excluded? Consequently, the verse must be referring to a case where he took the oath unwittingly, and it teaches that, nevertheless, one brings only 1 offering for each such violation. Rava said in response to the question posed by the sages, there is no need to derive from a verse that one is liable to bring only 1 offering for a false oath of testimony, since an oath of testimony is a matter that was included in a generalization, i.e., the general principle of an oath on an utterance, and it was singled out to teach a new matter with regard to it, in the case of an oath of testimony, in a testimony situation with regard to a court. You have only the new matter alone to consider. Meaning, Since an oath of testimony is singled out from other kinds of false oaths in that it applies only to potential witnesses in the context of a court case, therefore a case of an oath of testimony ceases to be included under the rubric of an oath on an utterance and has its own special law, the oath of testimony. And we could derive that also from the general principle, hermeneutical principle of a generalization followed by a specification. The Gemara asks, should one understand by inference that Abaye holds that in cases of oath of testimony, the oath on an utterance still exists in principle? One does not have to bring two offerings because the law derived from the verse, but if for some reason the oath of testimony does not take effect, one may still be liable for an oath on an utterance? But didn't Abaye say that Rav concedes that one is exempt from bringing an offering for an oath on an utterance in a case where one says to another, on my oath, I know testimony that is relevant to you, and it was found that he did not know testimony that was relevant to him. In that case, he is exempt from bringing an offering on an oath of utterance, since it is not an oath that could be inverted to a negative oath, I do not know testimony that is relevant to you, as that oath would not be an oath on an utterance, that would be an oath of testimony. The Gemara answers, Abaye retracted that opinion. And if you wish, say instead that Rav Papa said one of those statements, not Abaye, so Abaye didn't contradict himself. Now we're on page 26a, getting a little bit of a head start on our next class, which will be on Wednesday, God willing. The Mishna teaches that Rabbi Yishmael says one is liable only for an oath on an utterance about the future, right? Rabbi Yishmael, because the Torah is explicitly only about oaths on the future, he doesn't extend that to cover oaths about matters that happened in the past. Minority opinion. Rabbi Yishmael says, one is liable only for an oath on an utterance taken about the future. The sages taught in a baraisa with regard to an oath on an utterance from the verse, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good, and I've derived only that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters to which doing evil and doing good apply. From where do I derive that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters to which doing evil and doing good do not apply? The verse states, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips, which includes other matters. This is the amplification that Rabbi Akiva referred to earlier. I have derived only that one is liable for oaths referring to the future. From where do I derive that one is liable for oaths referring to the past? The verse subsequently states, whatsoever it be that a man shall clearly utter an oath, and this is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yishmael says the verse states to do evil or to do good, referring exclusively to oaths about the future. And Rabbi Akiva said to him, if so, then I've derived only that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters to which doing evil and doing good apply. From where do I derive that one is liable for an oath on an utterance with regard to matters to which doing evil and doing good do not apply? Rabbi Yishmael said to Rabbi Akiva in response, it's derived from an amplification of the meaning of the verse. Rabbi Akiva said, if you amplify to include matters about which doing evil or good do not apply, you should also amplify with regard to whether the oaths apply to past events. Rabbi Akiva, so now the Gemara questions. Rabbi Akiva said, well, his critique of the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. Why does Rabbi Yishmael disagree? Right. Rabbi Akiva made a very convincing argument. Why does Rabbi Yishmael not come around and agree with Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Yochanan said, it is because Rabbi Yishmael was the one who served as a disciple of Rabbi Nechonia ben Hakana, who would interpret the entire Torah with the hermeneutical principle of generalizations and a detail. Therefore, Rabbi Yishmael also interprets the Torah with this method of generalization and detail. Whereas Rabbi Akiva was one who served as a disciple of Nachum of Gamzo, who would interpret the entire Torah with the hermeneutical principle of amplification and restriction. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva also interprets the Torah by amplification and restriction. And adhering to these different hermeneutical principles will produce a different result of halacha, of law. What is the specific instance in this context where one finds that Rabbi Akiva uses the principle of amplifications and restrictions? It is, as is taught in the Baraisa, when the verse states, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips, it amplifies. the range of possible oaths for which one could be liable to bring an offering for an oath of utterance, right? Sounds like anything that you speak with your lips amplifies. But when the verse continues to do evil or to do good, it restricts the range. It's not going to be that oaths of utterance cover everything that you could swear that you will or won't do, but only matters that involve some kind of moral principle of good or evil. That's a restriction. But then when it further continues, whatsoever it be that a man shall utter clearly with an oath, it amplifies again. So according to the hermeneutical principle that when a verse amplified and then restricted and then amplified, what did it do? It amplified the relevant category to include everything except for the specific matter that was excluded by the restriction. So what was included when the verse amplified the range of liability? It amplified it to include all matters about which one might take an oath. And in what way did it restrict it when it said to do evil or to do good? It restricted the range of liability for an oath on an utterance to exclude an oath that is a matter involving a mitzvah, i.e. an oath to refrain from performing a mitzvah. That's what gets left out. Rabbi Yishmael interprets the verse following the hermeneutical principle of generalization and detail. So, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips, this is a generalization. To do evil or to do good is a detail. Whatsoever it be that a man shall clearly utter in an oath, the verse then further generalized. There's a hermeneutical principle that when a verse contains generalization, followed by detail, followed by generalization, you may deduce that the verse is referring only to the items that are similar to the detail. And just as the detail in the verse is explicitly an oath referring to the future, so too all oaths for which one is liable must be referring to the future. That's how Rabbi Yishmael arrives at that conclusion. The generalization serves to include even those matters that do not concern doing evil or good. When they refer to the future, the detail serves to exclude even matters that concern doing evil or good when they refer to the past. That's how Rabbi Yishmael arrives and maintains his opinion. The Gemara challenges, I will reverse it and say that the generalization serves to include oaths concerning the past, and the detail serves to exclude matters that do not involve doing good or evil. Why is that not an equally legitimate interpretation of the verse? And Rabbi Yitzchak said that Rabbi Yishmael understands that liability is extended to one whose oath is similar to an oath to do evil or to do good. He whose prohibition is due to the verse, he shall not break his word, from Numbers 30 verse 3, is liable, as liability for an oath about the future entails breaking one's word. Excluded is that oath whose prohibition is not due to the verse, he shall not break his word. Rather, it is due to the verse, you shall not lie. Leviticus 19:11, since liability for an oath about the past applies when the oath itself was a lie. Different, prohibited either way, but we're coming at it from different directions. About the future, don't break your word. About the past, don't lie. Rav Yitzchak Bar Avin says that there is a different explanation of how Rabbi Yishmael arrives at and maintains his opinion. The verse states, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good, referring to one whose oath precedes its clarification, i.e. the action that breaks it, and not to one who takes an oath where the clarification, i.e. the action prohibited by the oath, precedes the oath, meaning something that happened in the past. Excluded is that oath where one said, for example, I ate or I did not eat, where the action precedes the oath. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. The sage is taught in a baraisa. The verse states, or if anyone take an oath clearly with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatsoever it be that a man shall utter clearly with an oath, and it is hidden from him, and when he knows of it, be guilty in one of these things. And the phrase, a man with an oath, serves to exclude a victim of circumstances beyond his control from liability to bring an offering. And the term, and it is hidden, serves to exclude from liability one who broke his oath intentionally, as he does not deserve to be able to achieve atonement by bringing an offering, since he violated his oath intentionally. The Baraisa continues, the term from him teaches that one who was unaware of his oath, i.e. he forgot it, and subsequently broke it, is liable to bring an offering, because it was an unwitting violation. One might have thought that an oath taker is also liable when he broke an oath because he is unaware that a particular item is forbidden as the object of his oath. Therefore, the verse states, with an oath, and it is hidden from him. He is liable for lack of awareness of the oath, but he is not liable for lack of awareness of the object of the oath. And the master says above in the Baraisa, the phrase "a man with an oath," that serves to exclude a victim of circumstances beyond his control. So the Gemara asks, what are such circumstances? In other words, we're going to say that if you swear an oath to do something and then you forgot, right, and then you violate it, so you didn't do it intentionally, that you broke your oath, but did you do it unwittingly, and therefore you're liable to bring an offering? Or was this circumstances beyond your control, and therefore you're exempt because it doesn't rise even to the level of an unwitting violation? It's rather circumstances beyond your control. Sounds like forgetting, that should be unwitting violation. Whereas if, there's an earthquake and you have to, your hand is forced, so to speak, that would be circumstances beyond your control. But let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara answers, it is as with Rav Kahana and Rav Asi, who, when they were standing up in the presence of Rav, their teacher, at the conclusion of a lesson, disagreed with regard to exactly what he said. So one sage said, on my oath, Rav said like this, and the other sage said, on my oath, Rav said like that. And when they came before Rav to clarify what he had said, he stated his opinion in accordance with what one of them had said. And the other one said to Rav, did I take a false oath? And Rav said to him, your heart compelled you. Meaning, it is not regarded as a false oath, since at the time that you took the oath, you were certain that you were telling the truth. Right? So it's not that there was a truth and he swore falsely unwittingly. It's that he was sure he was telling the truth and it turned out that he wasn't. That's different than that the truth was established at that time and he later forgot and acted differently. And so this nuance of whether it was an unwitting violation or circumstances beyond his control in the realm of oaths, very nuanced. And that's where our discussion will continue when we return, God willing, to learn together on Wednesday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. All right, let's take a few questions. Sharon, if we cannot take an oath to give charity, why do we say bli neder during Yisker when we say we will give charity in someone's memory? Because a neder is not a Shevuos, right? You can make a vow about something specific, right? Even in the context of a mitzvah, whereas you can't make a Shevuos in the context of a mitzvah. Good question. Tom, what if you take an oath to eat eggs the next day and the next day is Yom Kippur? Or if you take an oath to eat eggs, or if you take an oath to eat eggs on the next day and you eat one single egg? Very good. You are reading with precision. So if you take an oath to eat eggs the next day and the next day is Yom Kippur, I would say that oath never took hold because you can't take an oath contrary to a mitzvah. If you swore to eat eggs and you only ate a single egg, I think that would be the violation, right? Because I think to satisfy your oath, you needed to eat eggs, right? Plural. However, when we use language like this, are we speaking with regards to our own intentions with so much precision? Maybe when we use the word eggs in English, we're like, yeah, I'm going to eat, the category of what emerges from a chicken and I scramble it up. And I would think to myself, yeah, and if I eat a single egg, a scrambled egg, that's like eggs. And I would have fulfilled my oath. And then later someone says, well, you said plural eggs and you only ate one egg. I didn't mean it that way. I think that's where we get into exactly this kind of nuance of circumstances beyond control based on my understanding of the language versus unwitting violation. Lionel, what if it's Lashon Hara regarding a statement about another person? Are you saying that the guy swears that so-and-so did something, and if you were to say that statement without even the language of swearing, hey, I saw that guy, walk past the charity box and not give, right? So that's gossip. And that's Lashon Hara. So you're commanded not to speak Lashon Hara. So if you're swearing about a statement that you're prohibited from making because of Lashon Hara, does the oath take hold? Lionel, amazing question. I don't know. I got to think about that. But it sounds like on its face, since we shouldn't be swearing about whether we will or won't, right? Like if you say, I swear, the person says he swears that tomorrow he will speak Lashon Hara, that should not take effect, right? Because he can't swear to violate the Torah. So therefore, when he swears in the past that this thing took place, which that utterance is Lashon Hara, it's different than I swear I spoke Lashon Hara, which maybe doesn't take effect, at least according to Rabbi Shimon, because you can't swear to speak Lashon Hara. But where I swear that the thing happened, which would be Lashon Hara, I don't know. Great question. Sharon, women are not obligated for tefillin, but are also not prohibited. Can a woman take an oath about tefillin? Great question. I think there you have found a place where, because the woman is not obligated, if she swears she will put on the tefillin, she's also not prohibited. She's not violating a halacha by doing it. So it sounds like if she takes the Shevuah to put it on, she obligates herself to do it. I'm sure there's other nuances on this that I'm not aware of, but it sounds like that would work. And finally, Tom, if someone swears an oath about something he is genuinely misinformed about, is it a false oath or one in vain? Is there any responsibility to know what you're talking about? You probably asked this before we got to that last bit about the students, about Rav Kahana and Rav Asi speaking in the presence of Rav. Right, where they were sure that what they were saying was true. And Rav said to him, that wasn't a false oath. It wasn't an oath in vain. That was a false oath that came about through circumstances beyond your control. So it is a false oath, but there's no liability because circumstances beyond control. That's what I've got for us today. May everybody have an incredibly meaningful, uplifting Shevuos tonight. Let it not be just the gift of Torah, Matan Torah, but Kabbalah's Torah that you accept upon yourself. Some increase in learning Torah, whether it's that you're going to be more focused or learn, 1 minute a day, something you weren't learning before, or a partnership, or something that you're going to commit to do in learning Torah and bring more Torah into your lives that wasn't there before, will make this Shavuos, this giving of the Torah real in your life today, not just something that happened 3,300 years ago. All the best. Hag Sameach. Good Yom Tif.